Most people would walk right past this penny without a second glance. But what if I told you that one small detail could make it one of the most fascinating coins ever struck in American history? A simple brown penny, dated 1944 with no mint mark, has stories of war, metal shortages, rare mistakes, and collector obsession hidden inside it. This coin is known as the 1944 no mint mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks ordinary. It shows the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln on the front, just like millions of other pennies. But behind that familiar design is a dramatic chapter of American history that makes this coin special, desirable, and in some cases, extremely valuable. To understand why this penny matters, we need to step back to the year 1944. The United States was deep into World War II. Factories were running non-stop, resources were tightly controlled, and every piece of metal was important. Copper was critical for ammunition, electrical wiring, and military equipment. Because of this, the U.S. government had already made a big change to pennies just 1 year earlier. In 1943, pennies were made from steel coated with zinc instead of copper. Those steel pennies looked silver in color and felt completely different. But they caused problems. They rusted, they stuck to magnets, and people often confused them with dimes. By 1944, the U.S. Mint wanted to return to a copper-colored penny, but there was a catch. Fresh copper was still in short supply. The solution was clever and practical. The Mint used recycled copper from spent military shell casings. These shell casings had once been fired on battlefields around the world, and now they were melted down and transformed into pennies. That means the 1944 Lincoln penny is literally made from metal that may have been part of the war effort. Very few coins can make that claim. The no mint mark part of this coin tells us where it was made. During this time, pennies struck at the Philadelphia Mint did not carry a mint mark. So if you see a 1944 penny with no letter under the date, it was made in Philadelphia. Millions were produced, but not all survived in good condition, and not all were created equally. The design of the coin is the classic Lincoln wheat cent design. On the front, you see Lincoln's profile, strong and calm, designed by Victor David Brenner. On the back, you see two wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, with E pluribus unum at the top. This design had been used since 1909 and would continue until 1958, making it one of the most beloved designs in U.S. coin history. The metal composition of the standard 1944 no mint mark penny is about 95% copper, with the remaining 5% made up of tin and zinc. This gives the coin its warm, reddish-brown color when new. Over time, most examples turn brown, while some well-preserved coins still show red or red-brown tones, which greatly affects value. Now here's where things get interesting. While most 1944 pennies were made from copper, a very small number were accidentally struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943. These are known as 1944 steel pennies, and they are among the rarest and most valuable Lincoln cents ever discovered. A genuine 1944 steel penny can be worth tens of thousands, and in some cases well over $100,000. But even among normal copper 1944 no mint mark pennies, value depends heavily on condition and special characteristics. Coins that were never heavily circulated, with sharp details and original color, are far more valuable than worn examples. Collectors look closely at Lincoln's hair, the wheat stalks, and the overall surface quality. Errors also play a major role. Some 1944 pennies show doubling in the lettering or date, known as a double die error. Others may have off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or unusual marks caused during the minting process. These errors turn an ordinary penny into a collector's treasure, so why is this penny considered rare or valuable if millions were made? The answer is survival and demand. While many were produced, most were heavily used during a time when people relied on cash for everyday transactions. Pennies passed through countless hands, wore down, and were eventually lost or destroyed. High-quality examples are much harder to find today. Collectors also love this coin because it represents a turning point. It marks the return to copper after the steel experiment, and it connects directly to World War II. When collectors hold a 1944 penny, they're holding a small piece of history that ties Homefront America to the global conflict of the time. In the collector market, values can range widely. A heavily worn 1944 no mint mark penny might be worth only a few cents over face value. A nice circulated example could sell for a few dollars. But uncirculated coins with strong detail can reach much higher prices, especially if they retain red color. Certified examples graded by professional services often bring impressive prices at auction. High-grade red examples have sold for hundreds, and in top condition over $1,000. Error coins, especially verified double dies or off-metal strikes, can push values far beyond that. The rare 1944 steel penny is in a category of its own. Only a small number are known to exist, and they are closely studied and authenticated. When one appears at auction, it attracts intense attention from collectors around the world. These coins are considered crown jewels of Lincoln cent collections. Because of these high values, fakes and altered coins do exist. One common trick is to take a 1943 steel penny and change the date to look like 1944. Another is to plate a normal copper penny to make it appear silver. Knowing how to spot a real one is critical. A genuine 1944 copper penny should not stick to a magnet. If it does, that's a red flag. A real steel example will stick to a magnet, but it must also pass weight and professional authentication tests. The shape of the numbers in the date is also important. Altered dates often look uneven or misshapen under magnification. Weight is another key detail. A normal 1944 copper penny weighs about 3.11 grams. A steel penny weighs less, around 2.7 grams. Even small differences can tell a big story. When in doubt, professional grading services are the safest way to confirm authenticity. There are also some fun and surprising facts about this coin. Because the copper came from recycled shell casings, many people like to say that 1944 pennies helped turn weapons into money. It's a poetic idea that resonates with collectors and historians alike. Another interesting detail is that kids in the 1940s often saved these pennies without realizing their significance. Some were tucked away in jars or drawers and forgotten for decades, only to be rediscovered by grandchildren or great-grandchildren. Collectors today love the 1944 no-mint mark Lincoln penny because it checks so many boxes. It has history, it has variety, it has rare errors, and it has a powerful story behind its metal. It's affordable for beginners in lower grades, yet still offers high-end excitement for advanced collectors. This penny also serves as a reminder that even common objects can become extraordinary over time. Something that once bought a piece of candy can later become a treasured collectible, studied, graded, and displayed with pride as you look through old jars, boxes, or inherited collections. That simple brown penny dated 1944 might be more than spare change. It might be a quiet witness to a world at war, a nation adapting, and a moment when even the smallest coin carried great meaning. So the next time you see a Lincoln wheat penny, take a closer look. Check the date. Look for the mint mark or the lack of one. Feel the weight. Test the magnet. Because history doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes, it waits patiently in your hand, no bigger than a penny, asking only that you notice it. Most people would walk right past this penny without a second glance. But what if I told you that a single cent from 1948 could quietly carry a story of post-war America, hidden value, and collector fascination that still surprises people today? This is the 1948 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a small copper coin that looks ordinary at first, yet holds an important place in American history and coin collecting. It is a 1-cent coin struck in the years just after World War II, a time when the United States was rebuilding, families were returning to normal life, and everyday objects like coins reflected a changing nation. The 1948 Lincoln penny was produced by the United States Mint at its main facility in Philadelphia. Coins struck in Philadelphia during this era did not carry a mint mark, which is why this penny is known as the 1948 no mint mark Lincoln cent. Millions were made, but age, condition, and certain details have turned some of these pennies into desirable collector pieces. To understand this coin, you have to step back into 1948. America had emerged from the war just a few years earlier. Factories that once produced military equipment were shifting back to consumer goods. Soldiers were returning home, starting families, and spending money again. The economy was growing, and the demand for everyday coins was strong. Pennies were needed for newspapers, candy, postage, and daily transactions. The Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for nearly 40 years, and it had become a familiar symbol in American pockets. The Lincoln penny itself was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. By 1948, his portrait was one of the most recognized images in the country. The design had survived wars, economic depression, and massive social change. That continuity gave people a sense of stability, and the 1948 penny continued that tradition. On the front of the coin, you see Lincoln's profile facing right. Above his head is the word Liberty, and behind him is the date 1948. In front of his face appears the familiar phrase, "In God we trust." The design is clean and dignified, meant to reflect honesty and strength rather than decoration. On the back of the coin are two wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This is why collectors often call these coins wheat pennies. The wheat design symbolized prosperity and abundance, fitting imagery for a nation moving forward after difficult years. The metal composition of the 1948 penny is also important. It is made primarily of copper, with small amounts of tin and zinc. During World War II, copper had been diverted for military use, and in 1943 pennies were famously made of steel. By 1948, copper had returned, and these pennies have a warm reddish-brown tone that many collectors love. Over time, exposure to air and handling causes the color to change, which plays a big role in a coin's value today. At first glance, the 1948 no-mint mark penny does not seem rare. Tens of millions were produced. But rarity in coin collecting is not just about how many were made. It is about how many survived in good condition. Most of these pennies were heavily used. They passed through countless hands, sat in jars, and were worn down by everyday life. Finding one today that still has sharp details, clean surfaces, and original color is far more difficult than the production numbers suggest. There are also small variations and errors that can make certain 1948 pennies especially interesting. Some examples show weak strikes, where parts of the design did not fully form. Others may display die cracks, small raised lines caused by worn minting equipment. Occasionally, collectors find doubling in the lettering or date, where numbers or letters appear slightly repeated. These errors were not intentional, but they add personality to the coin and can increase its appeal. Value is where curiosity really grows. In average circulated condition, a 1948 no-mint mark penny is usually worth only a few cents to a couple of dollars. But value rises quickly with condition. A penny that still shows strong wheat lines, clear lettering, and minimal wear can be worth significantly more. Uncirculated examples, especially those with original red copper color, can command much higher prices. Collectors and auction records show that high-grade 1948 pennies have sold for impressive amounts. Coins graded in top condition by professional grading services have reached hundreds of dollars. In rare cases, exceptional examples with nearly perfect surfaces and bright original color have sold for over $1,000. These prices are not about hype. They reflect scarcity, demand, and the challenge of finding such a well-preserved coin after more than 70 years. Knowing how to identify a genuine 1948 no-mint mark penny is important, especially as interest grows. First, check the date carefully. The numbers should look even and natural, not altered or engraved. The coin should weigh about 3.11 grams, consistent with copper pennies of that era. A strong magnet test can help, since real copper pennies are not magnetic. The surface should show natural aging, not artificial shine or plating. If a coin seems too perfect or unusual, professional authentication is always a smart step. Counterfeits do exist, though they are not extremely common for this date. Some altered coins are made by changing dates from similar years. Others may be cleaned aggressively to appear more valuable, which actually lowers collector interest. Original surfaces are always preferred. In coin collecting, originality often matters more than brightness. There are also fun details that make the 1948 penny charming. For example, many people born in 1948 still enjoy finding a penny from their birth year. Others enjoy collecting one penny from every year of the wheat series, making the 1948 an essential piece. Some collectors even search rolls of old pennies hoping to find one with exceptional color hiding among worn coins. Another surprising fact is how much these pennies tell us about daily life in the late 1940s. A single cent had real buying power. It could purchase small items that no longer exist at that price. Holding a 1948 penny connects you directly to that era, to a time when money felt different and even the smallest coin mattered. Collectors today love the 1948 no-mint mark penny because it represents balance. It is old enough to feel historic, yet common enough that people can realistically hope to find one. It offers learning opportunities for beginners and condition challenges for advanced collectors. It also carries the emotional weight of post-war optimism, quietly embedded in copper. For many collectors, the appeal is not just financial. It is about the hunt, the history, and the satisfaction of recognizing value where others see nothing special. A small brown penny can open the door to a deeper appreciation of American history and craftsmanship, so the next time you come across a jar of old coins, pay close attention. That worn copper penny dated 1948 might not change your life overnight, but it could surprise you. It could be a reminder that even the smallest pieces of history still have stories to tell. And sometimes, real value hides in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look a little closer. Most people walk past pennies every day without a second thought, but what if I told you one small brown coin from 1951 could quietly hold a story of post-war America, hidden details, and surprising collector interest that most people never notice until it's too late? Today we're talking about the 1951 D. Lincoln Wheat penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, yet carries history, craftsmanship, and value that continue to fascinate collectors more than 70 years later. This coin is a 1-cent piece struck in 1951 at the Denver Mint, which is why it carries the small letter D just below the date on the front. It belongs to the famous Lincoln Wheat penny series, officially known as the Lincoln cent, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. By 1951, this design had already been in circulation for more than 4 decades and had become one of the most recognized coins in American pockets. To understand why the 1951 D penny matters, we need to step back into its time. The year 1951 sat right in the middle of a changing America. World War II had ended only a few years earlier. Soldiers had returned home, industries had shifted from wartime production to consumer goods, and the United States was entering a new economic era shaped by growth, optimism, and global responsibility. Coins like this penny were part of everyday life during that transition, passing through countless hands as Americans rebuilt, spent, saved, and planned for the future. The 1951 Lincoln penny was produced by the United States Mint during a period when coin production was carefully managed to meet the needs of a growing population. Denver was one of the major minting facilities, and in 1951 it struck a very large number of pennies. Because of that, many people assume the 1951 D penny is common and uninteresting. That assumption is exactly why valuable examples are often overlooked. On the front of the coin, you see the familiar right-facing portrait of Abraham Lincoln. This design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner and has become one of the longest-running portraits in U.S. coinage history. Above Lincoln's head is the word Liberty. In front of his face is the date 1951, with the small D mint mark just below it. Along the right edge runs the phrase "In God We Trust," a motto that had taken on even deeper meaning in the years following the war. Flip the coin over, and you see the classic wheat reverse. 2 curved wheat stalks frame the words 1 cent and United States of America, with the phrase E pluribus unum at the top. This reverse design symbolized America's agricultural roots and prosperity. By 1951, this design was nearing the end of its run, as it would be replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse just a few years later in 1959. The metal composition of the 1951 D penny is another important detail. It is made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This gives the coin its warm reddish-brown color when well preserved. Unlike the steel cents of 1943, which were an emergency wartime measure, the 1951 penny returned to the traditional copper alloy that collectors love today for its weight, color, and durability. At first glance, nothing about the 1951 D penny screams rare. Millions were struck. But rarity in coin collecting is not just about how many were made. It's about how many survive in excellent condition. Most of these pennies were heavily circulated. They jingled in pockets, slid across store counters, and sat for years in jars and drawers. As a result, truly sharp, clean, well-preserved examples are far scarcer than people realize. Condition is everything with this coin. A heavily worn 1951D penny might be worth only a few cents above face value. But a high-grade example, especially one with strong original luster and minimal marks, can be worth many times more. Coins graded in mint state, meaning they show no signs of circulation wear, are where collector interest really heats up. Then there are errors and varieties which add another layer of excitement. While the 1951D penny is not famous for one single dramatic error, collectors have found examples with off-center strikes, die cracks, weak strikes, and repunched mint marks. These small mistakes happened during the minting process and were never meant to leave the mint. When they did, they created unique coins that stand out from the millions of normal strikes. Some of these error coins have sold for impressive prices at auction. High-grade 1951D pennies certified by professional grading services have reached into the hundreds of dollars, and in rare cases even higher depending on eye appeal and demand. Error examples, especially dramatic off-center strikes or strong die cracks, can command significant premiums because no two errors are exactly alike. Collectors often ask how to tell if a 1951D penny is real and worth attention. The first step is weight and feel. A genuine 1951 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. The color should look natural, not overly bright or artificially shiny. On authentic coins, details like Lincoln's hair, beard, and coat show clear lines, even if worn. On the reverse, the wheat stalks should have visible texture rather than appearing flat or blurry. Be cautious of coins that look too perfect. Overcleaned pennies may shine brightly, but cleaning actually reduces value. Natural aging and toning are preferred by collectors. If you believe you have a particularly nice or unusual example, professional grading can confirm authenticity and condition, which often increases buyer confidence and market value. One surprising fact about the 1951D penny is how many people unknowingly spent them without ever looking closely. During the early 1950s, pennies had real buying power. You could buy candy, make phone calls, or contribute to savings jars with coins like this. Today, that same penny might sit forgotten in a jar, quietly holding collector potential. Another interesting detail is how this coin represents the final years of an era. The wheat reverse design ended in 1958. That makes the 1951D part of the closing chapter of a design that began in 1909. Collectors who focus on wheat cents often feel a special connection to these later dates because they bridge early American coinage traditions with the modern era. Collectors love the 1951D Lincoln penny not because it is flashy, but because it rewards knowledge and patience. It teaches that value is not always obvious. It reminds us that history often hides in plain sight. Every mark, every tone, and every tiny detail tells a story of where the coin has been and who might have held it. Today, this penny continues to attract both new and experienced collectors. Beginners enjoy it because it is affordable and easy to find, while advanced collectors hunt for top-grade or error examples to complete high-quality sets. It is a coin that grows with the collector, offering new lessons at every level, so the next time you come across a handful of old pennies, take a closer look. That small D beneath the date 1951 might be more than just a letter. It might be a quiet reminder of post-war America, skilled craftsmanship, and the idea that even the smallest coin can carry a surprisingly big story. And that's the real magic of the 1951D Lincoln wheat penny. It's not just a cent. It's a piece of history waiting to be noticed, understood, and maybe even rediscovered right where you least expect it. What if the penny sitting quietly in an old jar or tucked inside a forgotten envelope was struck during a tense moment in American history and quietly carries a story most people never hear? Today, we're uncovering the surprising truth behind the 1952 Lincoln penny, a small copper coin with a big story and a value that might surprise you. The 1952 Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin struck in San Francisco and marked with a small letter S below the date. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary old penny. Abraham Lincoln faces right on the front, just like millions of others. But when you slow down and really look at this coin, you discover it was born during a pivotal era in American history and produced under conditions that make it especially interesting to collectors today. This penny was made in 1952, a year when the United States was deep into the Cold War. The Korean War was still ongoing, Americans were adjusting to life after World War II, and the nation was rapidly changing. Coins like this one were not souvenirs or collectibles at the time. They were tools of daily life used to buy bread, newspapers, and cups of coffee. Yet every coin carries the fingerprint of its era, and the 1952 penny is no exception. BY 1952. The Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for more than 4 decades. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, making it the first regular issue U.S. coin to feature a real historical person. The design had become familiar and trusted by the American public. During the early 1950s, the U.S. economy was growing and millions of pennies were still needed for everyday commerce. The San Francisco Mint, known officially as the San Francisco Mint, played a smaller role in penny production compared to Philadelphia and Denver. In 1952, San Francisco struck significantly fewer Lincoln cents than the other mints. This lower production is one of the reasons collectors pay closer attention to coins with the S mint mark from this era. The design of the 1952 Lincoln penny is classic and instantly recognizable. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln's profile, calm and dignified. This portrait was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, whose initials appear subtly on the coin. Above Lincoln's head is the word liberty, while the phrase "In God We Trust" curves along the top edge. The date 1952 sits clearly in front of Lincoln's face, with the small S mint mark just below it. Turn the coin over, and you'll see the familiar wheat ears design. 2 wheat stalks frame the words 1 cent and United States of America, with E pluribus unum at the top. This wheat design was used from 1909 through 1958, and today it's affectionately known among collectors as the wheat penny era. The design reflects America's agricultural roots and the importance of farming to the nation's identity. The metal composition of the 1952 penny is another fascinating detail. It is made of 95% copper, with the remaining 5% consisting of zinc and tin. This gives the coin its warm reddish-brown color when new. Unlike some earlier wartime pennies made from steel, the 1952 issue returned fully to copper after material shortages eased following World War II. When it comes to errors and variations, the 1952 Lincoln penny does not have famous dramatic errors like some other years, but that does not mean error coins don't exist. Collectors have found examples with off-center strikes, weak strikes, and occasional die cracks. These are small mistakes made during the minting process, and while they are not common, they can add significant interest and value when found in good condition. So why is this penny considered rare or valuable today? The key lies in condition and survival. While millions were minted, most entered circulation and stayed there for decades. Pennies are easily damaged, worn down, or lost. Finding a 1952 penny today in high-grade condition, especially with strong details and original color, is surprisingly difficult. Coins from the San Francisco Mint often had softer strikes compared to other mints, meaning the design details were not always as sharp. This makes well-struck examples even more desirable. Collectors look closely at Lincoln's hair, the wheat lines on the reverse, and the overall clarity of the design. A sharp, clean example stands out immediately. Real-world sales show how value can change dramatically based on condition. A heavily worn 1952 penny might be worth only a few cents above face value, but a lightly circulated example with clear details can sell for several dollars. When you move into uncirculated condition, prices rise quickly. High-grade examples certified by professional grading services have sold for hundreds of dollars, and in top condition, sometimes even more. Auction records reveal that collectors are willing to pay strong premiums for coins that look nearly as they did when they left the mint. Pennies with bright red copper surfaces, minimal marks, and excellent eye appeal are especially prized. These coins are scarce because copper naturally darkens and wears over time. Knowing how to identify a genuine 1952 Lincoln penny is important, especially as values increase. First, check the date and the mint mark. The S should appear just below the date on the front of the coin. It should look natural and part of the coin, not added later. Altered mint marks are one of the most common tricks used to deceive new collectors. Next, examine the weight and color. A genuine coin should weigh about 3.11 grams and have the typical copper tone of mid-century Lincoln cents. If the coin looks unusually shiny, too light, or oddly colored, it may have been cleaned or altered, which reduces its value. Magnification can help you spot problems. Look for consistent wear patterns and natural aging. Real coins age evenly. If the surfaces look scratched, polished, or unnaturally smooth, the coin may have been cleaned. While cleaning might make a coin look nicer to the untrained eye, it almost always lowers collector value. Professional authentication is the safest option for valuable examples. Reputable grading services encapsulate coins and confirm their authenticity and condition. This provides peace of mind and makes the coin easier to sell in the future. There are also some fun and surprising facts about the 1952 penny. In 1952, the Lincoln cent was still a vital part of everyday transactions. Vending machines, payphones, and parking meters often relied on pennies. Children saved them in jars, and adults rarely gave them a second thought. Another interesting detail is that the wheat penny design would disappear just 6 years later. In 1959, the Lincoln Memorial reverse replaced the wheat ears. This makes the 1952 penny part of the final chapter of a beloved design that many collectors feel represents a simpler era of American coinage. Collectors today love the 1952 Lincoln penny because it sits at the crossroads of history, design, and scarcity. It is old enough to feel historic but modern enough to be relatable. Many people remember seeing similar pennies in circulation during their childhood or hearing stories from parents and grandparents who used them daily. This coin also appeals to collectors who enjoy building complete sets. The wheat penny series is one of the most popular collecting goals in American numismatics. Completing a set with strong examples from each mint is a satisfying challenge, and the 1952 often becomes a key piece because of its relative scarcity and high grade. Beyond its monetary value, the 1952 penny connects us to a specific moment in time. It passed through countless hands during an era of growth, tension, and optimism. Each small mark and color change tells a story of where it's been and what it has seen. So the next time you come across an old penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look at the date and the mint mark. That small S under 1952 might just open the door to a fascinating piece of American history and a collectible that continues to capture the attention of coin lovers across the country. And remember, sometimes the most ordinary-looking objects carry the most extraordinary stories. The 1952 Lincoln penny is proof that even a single cent can be worth far more than its face value. Not just in dollars, but in history, curiosity, and the thrill of discovery. Most people have walked past this coin 1,000 times without realizing what it could be hiding, because the 1954 Lincoln penny looks ordinary at first glance. Yet in the right condition, it can be a small piece of American history that quietly surprises collectors even today. This coin is the 1954 Lincoln 1 cent with a D mint mark. A penny struck in Denver during a time when America was rebuilding confidence, prosperity was growing, and everyday coins carried stories far bigger than their size. It is part of the famous Lincoln Wheat Cent series, a design that millions of Americans once carried in their pockets without a second thought. To understand this penny, you have to step back into 1954. The United States was less than a decade removed from World War II. Families were settling into suburban life, factories were booming, and the country was deep into the Cold War era. Coins like this one were made for daily use, not for collectors. The Denver Mint struck the 1954 Lincoln cent to meet the massive demand for everyday change in a growing economy. At the time, no one imagined that future collectors would carefully examine these pennies under magnification, searching for tiny details and hidden value. The design of the coin connects directly to American identity. On the front is the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, a design first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of his birth. By 1954, this portrait was already deeply familiar to the public. Lincoln faces right, with the word Liberty to the left and the date below. Just beneath the date is the small but important letter D, showing that this penny was minted in Denver. The back of the coin features two wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, with the phrase E pluribus unum across the top. This wheat design symbolized prosperity and strength, and it remained in use until 1958. The 1954 D penny is part of the final years of this classic design, which adds to its appeal among collectors today. In terms of metal, this penny was made primarily of copper. Specifically, it contains about 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. This composition gives the coin its warm reddish color when new. Over time, circulation, handling, and environmental exposure caused many examples to darken or turn brown. Coins that still retain their original red color are far scarcer today and are often the ones that attract the highest prices. At first glance, the 1954 D. Lincoln penny does not seem rare. The Denver Mint produced tens of millions of these coins, and for decades they were extremely common in circulation. However, rarity in coin collecting is not only about how many were made. It is about how many survive today in excellent condition. Most 1954 D pennies were heavily used, scratched, worn, and eventually lost or melted. High-quality examples are a different story. Collectors pay close attention to condition. A penny that shows heavy wear, flat details, and discoloration is usually worth only a small premium over face value. But a sharply struck coin with strong details, clean surfaces, and original color can be worth significantly more. Coins graded in top condition by professional services are the ones that turn heads at auctions. Another layer of interest comes from errors and varieties. While the 1954 D penny is not famous for a single dramatic error like some other years, small minting mistakes do exist. These can include off-center strikes, die cracks, or weak strikes where parts of the design did not fully form. Such errors happened during the fast-paced minting process and were usually released into circulation unnoticed. Today, collectors actively search for these unusual examples because they add character and rarity to an otherwise common date. Value is where curiosity really starts to grow. In circulated condition, a typical 1954 D penny may be worth only a few cents to $1, depending on where. But uncirculated examples tell a different story. Coins that still show strong luster and minimal marks can sell for tens of dollars. At the highest end, professionally graded coins in near-perfect condition have sold for several $100s at auction. These are not everyday finds, but they do exist, and they often come from old collections or rolls that were set aside decades ago. Collectors love real-world stories, and auction records provide proof that condition matters. There have been documented sales where a top-grade 1954 D. Lincoln penny achieved impressive prices because of its sharp strike and original red color. These sales remind people that even a common-looking penny can become valuable when preserved carefully. This is why collectors still examine jars of old coins and inherited collections, hoping to find a hidden gem. Identifying a genuine 1954 D penny is straightforward if you know what to look for. Start with the date 1954 on the front and check just below it for the small D mint mark. The lettering should look sharp and consistent, not blurry or uneven. The wheat stalks on the back should be clearly defined with visible lines. Weight is another clue. A genuine copper penny from this era weighs about 3.11 grams. Coins that are significantly lighter or heavier may be altered or damaged. Fakes and altered coins do exist, though they are less common for this date than for more famous rarities. Some altered pennies have mint marks added or dates changed to mimic more valuable coins. Under magnification, these alterations often show tool marks or unnatural shapes. If a coin seems unusually valuable or suspicious, professional authentication is always recommended. There are also fun and surprising details tied to this penny. In 1954, pennies had real buying power. A single cent could still purchase small items like candy or gum. Millions of these coins passed through the hands of schoolchildren, shopkeepers, and factory workers. Each one carries invisible stories of everyday American life during the mid-20th century. Another interesting fact is how copper value plays into modern interest. Because these pennies contain so much copper, they are often discussed whenever copper prices rise. While melting them is illegal, their metal content adds an extra layer of fascination for people who stack or collect pre-1982 copper cents. Collectors today love the 1954 D. Lincoln penny not because it is impossibly rare, but because it represents an achievable piece of history. It is a coin that invites beginners into the hobby, while still offering challenges for advanced collectors who seek the highest grades or unusual errors. It connects people to a time when coins were made to last and design mattered deeply. For many collectors, this penny is also about nostalgia. It reminds them of childhood piggy banks, pocket change from parents, or jars of coins saved over the years. Holding a bright, well-preserved example feels like touching a moment frozen in time, a small reminder of America's past wrapped in copper. As you think about the 1954 D. Lincoln penny, remember that value is not always obvious. Sometimes it is hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to notice condition, detail, and history. The next time you see an old penny, take a second look. It might just be another worn coin, or it could be a quiet survivor from 1954, still carrying its story more than 70 years later. And that is the real fascination of this coin. It teaches us that even the most ordinary objects can become extraordinary when time, history, and careful preservation come together. Somewhere, perhaps in a forgotten drawer or an old collection, another 1954 D Lincoln penny is waiting to be rediscovered, and its journey is far from over. Imagine reaching into a jar of old pennies, pulling one out, and realizing you might be holding a tiny piece of American history that collectors have searched for decades. A simple brown coin, 1 cent dated 1955, no mint mark. And suddenly, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Today we're talking about the 1955 no mint mark Lincoln penny, one of the most talked about and misunderstood coins in U.S. history. Some examples are common, others are legendary, and the difference between the two can mean the gap between a penny and a life-changing discovery. This coin is a Lincoln 1-cent piece struck in 1955 without a mint mark, which tells us it was produced in Philadelphia. At first glance, it looks like any other old penny. Abraham Lincoln faces right on the front. Wheat stalks frame the words 1 cent on the back. Nothing flashy, nothing obvious. And yet, this single year has become one of the most famous dates in American coin collecting. To understand why, we need to go back to the mid-1950s. The United States was in the middle of a post-war economic boom. Cars were bigger, suburbs were growing, and everyday commerce relied heavily on coins. In 1955, the United States Mint was striking hundreds of millions of pennies to meet demand. Most of these coins were meant to be ordinary, spendable money. No one at the time imagined that one small production mistake would turn part of this year's output into a numismatic legend. The Lincoln cent design itself had already been around for decades. Introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, it was the first U.S. coin to feature a real person. The portrait of Lincoln was designed by Victor David Brenner, whose initials appear subtly on the coin. By 1955, Americans were used to seeing Lincoln's calm profile in their pockets every day. The metal composition of the 1955 penny is simple and classic. It's made primarily of copper, with a small amount of tin and zinc. That copper content gives the coin its warm reddish tone when new, which slowly turns brown over time. There is nothing unusual about the metal itself, and that's important to understand. The value of this coin does not come from what it's made of. It comes from how it was made. On the front, you'll see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, liberty to the left, and the date 1955 to the right. On the back, 2 wheat ears curve inward around the words 1 cent and United States of America, with E pluribus unum at the top. This is why collectors often call it a wheat penny. In 1959, this design would be replaced, making 1955 one of the final years of the classic wheat cent era. Now here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. While millions of normal 1955 no-mint mark pennies were struck, a small number were created with one of the most famous minting errors ever seen, the 1955 double die obverse. This error happened when the coin dies were misaligned during the hubbing process, causing the design to be doubled. The result is dramatic doubling that can be seen clearly with the naked eye. On a true double die example, the date looks like it's been stamped twice. The numbers appear thick, shadowed, almost vibrating. The word liberty looks doubled, and In God We Trust appears bold and split. This was not a subtle mistake. It was obvious. So obvious, in fact, that many people noticed it almost immediately when the coins entered circulation. What makes this even more fascinating is that these error coins were not recalled. They were released into everyday circulation. People used them to buy coffee, newspapers, and groceries. Many were spent before anyone realized how rare they would become. Over time, collectors began pulling them out of circulation, and the legend of the 1955 double die penny was born. It's important to be very clear here. Not every 1955 no-mint mark penny is rare or valuable. The standard, non-error version is fairly common. In worn condition, it might be worth only a few cents to $1. Even in nice, uncirculated condition, it usually sells for modest amounts. The real excitement comes from that specific double die variety. Because the doubling is so bold, it became one of the first error coins that average Americans learned to recognize. It was featured in newspapers, magazines, and early coin collecting guides. For many people, this was the coin that sparked a lifelong interest in collecting. When it comes to auction values, genuine 1955 double die pennies have achieved remarkable prices. Well-worn examples, even those that have clearly been used in circulation, can sell for thousands of dollars. Coins in higher grades, with sharper detail and original color, have sold for tens of thousands. In top condition, with professional certification, some examples have crossed into six-figure territory at major auctions. These are not rumors. These are documented sales that continue to fuel the coin's legendary status. So how do you tell if you have the real thing? First, look at the date. On a genuine double die, the numbers in 1955 will show strong separation. This is not a blurry effect. It looks like two impressions overlapping. Next, examine the word Liberty. On authentic examples, the letters appear clearly doubled, especially the L and the B. Then check In God We Trust. All three words should show strong doubling. One common mistake people make is confusing machine doubling with true double die. Machine doubling looks flat and shelf-like, as if the metal was pushed sideways. True double die doubling looks rounded and full, because it's part of the die itself. If the doubling looks weak, flat, or only visible under certain angles of light, it's probably not the famous variety. Because this coin is so valuable, counterfeits and altered coins do exist. Some people try to fake the doubling by engraving or tooling the surface. That's why serious collectors rely on professional grading services to authenticate high-value examples. If you ever believe you've found one, the smartest move is to have it examined by experts rather than trying to sell it immediately. There are also some fun and surprising details about this coin. The 1955 double die penny became so famous that it appeared in pop culture references and even jokes about lucky pennies. It's often called the king of Lincoln cent errors. For many collectors, it's a dream coin, one they hope to find at a flea market, estate sale, or in an old family collection. Another interesting fact is that many genuine examples show heavy wear. That's because people didn't realize their value right away. By the time collectors started saving them, many had already spent years in circulation. Finding one in pristine condition is exceptionally rare, which is why high-grade examples bring such strong prices. Collectors love this coin today not just because of its value, but because of its story. It represents a moment when a small mistake slipped through the system and created something unforgettable. It's a reminder that even in mass production, human error can create rarity. And it shows how everyday objects can become treasures over time. The 1955 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is also a favorite teaching coin. It's often used to explain how minting errors happen and why they matter. It bridges the gap between casual collectors and serious numismatists. Almost everyone who collects US coins knows this penny, even if they've never owned one. So the next time you see an old penny dated 1955, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Study the numbers. Examine the letters. Because hidden among ordinary cents is one of the most famous coins America has ever produced. And that's what makes this coin so powerful. It's not just about money. It's about curiosity. It's about paying attention. And it's about the idea that history sometimes hides in plain sight, waiting for someone to notice. What other everyday coins might be quietly carrying stories just as remarkable? That question is what keeps collectors searching, one penny at a time. What if the penny sitting quietly in an old jar, a drawer, or a childhood piggy bank is worth far more than 1 cent? Not because it's flashy or gold, but because of the quiet story it carries from 1956, a year frozen in American history. Today we're talking about the 1956 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a small copper coin that millions of people have handled without ever realizing why collectors still search for it, study it, and sometimes pay surprising amounts to own the right one. This coin is officially called the Lincoln wheat penny, and the version with no mint mark was struck in Philadelphia. When there is no letter under the date, it means the coin came from the main mint that produced the majority of America's everyday money. In 1956, these pennies were meant for daily use, passed from hand to hand, spent on candy, newspapers, and bus fares, never intended to become collectibles. To understand this penny, we need to step back into 1956. America was in the middle of the post-war boom. Televisions were entering living rooms, highways were expanding, and families were optimistic about the future. The U.S. Mint was producing coins at a massive scale to keep up with a growing economy. The Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for nearly 50 years, honoring President Abraham Lincoln, whose portrait had appeared on the penny since 1909. The 1956 penny continued this tradition. There was nothing flashy about its release. No special announcement, no commemorative purpose. It was simply part of the steady rhythm of American money. And yet, that simplicity is exactly what makes it interesting today. The coin is made primarily of copper with a small amount of tin and zinc mixed in. This gives it that warm reddish-brown color when new, which slowly darkens over time. On the front, you see Lincoln's profile, calm and dignified, with the words "In God We Trust" above, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1956 to the right. Because there is no mint mark, you won't see any letter below the date. Flip the coin over, and you see the iconic wheat ears framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This wheat design was used from 1909 until 1958, just 2 years after this penny was made. That means the 1956 penny comes from the final chapter of the wheat penny era, which alone gives it historical appeal. Now here's where things get interesting. While millions of 1956 no-mint mark pennies were produced, not all of them survived in good condition. These coins were heavily used. They jingled in pockets, scraped against keys, and wore down on counters and sidewalks. Finding one today is easy. Finding one in excellent condition is not. Collectors care deeply about condition. A heavily worn 1956 penny may only be worth face value. But a well-preserved example, especially one with sharp details and original color, can be worth many times more. Pennies that still show strong red color from their original copper surface are especially desirable, because copper naturally darkens with age. Some 1956 pennies also have minor errors that increase their value. These are not dramatic mistakes you can spot from across the room, but subtle differences that collectors love. Slight off-center strikes, doubled letters, or unusually strong details can all add interest. These errors happen during the fast-paced minting process, when machines struck thousands of coins every hour. So why is this penny considered valuable at all, when it isn't rare in the traditional sense? The answer lies in a combination of age, condition, and nostalgia. The 1956 penny represents the everyday life of mid-century America. It's a coin people remember from their parents' or grandparents' time. That emotional connection fuels demand among collectors. Real auction results show this clearly. While circulated examples often sell for just a few cents or $1, uncirculated 1956 no-mint mark pennies have sold for much higher prices. Coins graded in top condition by professional services have sold for tens, sometimes even hundreds of dollars, depending on their color and sharpness. The highest prices are paid for coins that look almost exactly as they did the day they left the mint. This brings us to an important question. How do you know if you have a real and valuable 1956 penny? First, check the date carefully. It should clearly read 1956, with no letter below the date. Next, look at Lincoln's face and hair. Are the details sharp or worn smooth? Look at the wheat ears on the back. Can you still see the individual lines, or are they faded? Weight is another clue. A genuine 1956 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. Modern pennies are lighter, so a big difference in weight can be a red flag. Also pay attention to the color. Original copper pennies may appear red, reddish-brown, or brown. Be cautious of coins that look unnaturally shiny, as some have been cleaned, which can actually reduce value. Counterfeit 1956 pennies are rare, but altered coins do exist. Sometimes dates are changed from other years, or coins are modified to appear better than they are. When in doubt, serious collectors rely on professional grading services to authenticate and grade their coins. Here's a fun fact many people don't realize. In 1956, the U.S. Mint was still perfecting its mass production techniques. Small variations from coin to coin were common. That means no two 1956 pennies are exactly alike when you look closely enough. Tiny differences in strike strength or surface texture make each one slightly unique. Another surprising detail is how close this coin is to the end of an era. Just 2 years later, in 1958, the wheat design was retired and replaced with the Lincoln Memorial. That makes the 1956 penny part of the final generation of wheat cents, which adds to its charm and collectability. Collectors today love this coin not because it promises instant riches, but because it offers a tangible link to history. It's affordable, accessible, and rich with story. It invites beginners into the hobby while still offering challenges for experienced collectors who hunt for the best examples. The 1956 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny teaches an important lesson. Value isn't always about rarity alone. Sometimes it's about preservation, timing, and the human stories attached to an object. This coin survived decades of circulation, economic change, and shifting tastes, yet it still captures attention. So the next time you come across an old penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Hold it, turn it over, and imagine the hands it passed through in 1956. That small piece of copper may not make you rich, but it might connect you to a moment in American history that still quietly matters. And if you ever find a 1956 penny that looks just a little too perfect for its age, you might be holding more than spare change. You might be holding a reminder that even the smallest coins can carry the biggest stories. What if I told you that a simple penny, the kind many people still ignore or toss into a jar, could carry a hidden story of American history and quiet value that most owners never realize? Today, that story belongs to the 1957 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny, a small copper coin that looks ordinary at first glance, but becomes fascinating the moment you slow down and really look at it. This coin is officially known as the 1957 Lincoln wheat penny with no mint mark. The words no mint mark simply mean it was made in Philadelphia, the main mint of the United States at the time. During that era, pennies struck in Philadelphia did not carry a letter under the date. Millions were produced, yet decades later, collectors still seek them out for reasons that go far beyond face value. To understand this penny, we need to step back to the year 1957. America was in the middle of a powerful transformation. The country was booming economically, suburbs were expanding, and families were filled with optimism about the future. Dwight Eisenhower was president, rock and roll was rising, and the Cold War shaped everyday life. In the middle of all that change, the United States Mint continued producing the familiar Lincoln cent, a coin that had already been part of American life for nearly half a century. The Lincoln penny was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. It was the first circulating U.S. coin to feature a real historical person rather than a symbolic figure. By 1957, Americans were deeply familiar with Lincoln's face on the penny, and the design had become a symbol of stability and tradition. The 1957 penny features the classic wheat reverse design. On the front or obverse, you see Lincoln's profile facing right, along with the words "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date. On the back, or reverse, you see two wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This design would only last one more year, because in 1959 it was replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse. That timing is important. The 1957 no-mint mark penny belongs to the final chapter of the wheat penny era. Collectors often appreciate coins that represent the end of a long-running design, and this penny sits just before a major change in American coinage history. The metal composition of the 1957 penny is another key detail. It is made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This gives it a warm, rich tone that modern pennies no longer have. In fact, pennies made today contain mostly zinc with a thin copper coating. When you hold a 1957 penny, you are holding a coin that feels heavier and more solid than its modern counterparts. So why do collectors care about a penny that was minted in large numbers? The answer lies in condition, scarcity, and high grades, and small variations that make certain examples stand out. While millions were made, most were heavily used in daily transactions. They passed through countless hands, spent years in pockets, cash registers, and jars, and slowly wore down. Finding a 1957 no-mint mark penny in excellent condition today is much harder than it sounds. Coins that show sharp details, full wheat lines, and minimal wear are far less common. Collectors pay close attention to surface quality, color, and overall preservation. Color plays a big role in value. Copper pennies are typically classified as red, red-brown, or brown. A fully red 1957 penny that has retained its original mint luster is especially desirable. Over time, copper naturally darkens, so bright red examples from the 1950s are increasingly rare. Another reason collectors watch this coin closely is the possibility of mint errors. While most 1957 pennies were struck normally, a small number show fascinating mistakes. These include double die errors, where parts of the lettering or date appear doubled, off-center strikes, and repunched dates. These errors were accidental, but today they add excitement and value. One of the most talked about errors involves slight doubling in the date or lettering. These are not common, and confirming them usually requires magnification. When genuine, such errors can significantly raise the coin's value and turn a modest penny into a collector's highlight. Now let's talk about real-world value. A typical circulated 1957 no-mint mark penny may only be worth a few cents above face value. However, value changes quickly as condition improves. Uncirculated examples with strong detail often sell for several dollars. Coins graded by professional services in high mint state grades can sell for much more. At auctions, top-quality examples have surprised many people. A sharply struck, fully red 1957 penny graded at a high level has sold for hundreds, and in some cases over $1,000. These results show that condition truly is everything in coin collecting. Collectors are not just buying metal. They are buying history, preservation, and rarity within a common issue. A penny that survived more than 60 years without heavy wear becomes something special, even if millions once existed. If you think you might own one of these pennies, knowing how to identify a real example is important. First, look at the date. It should clearly read 1957. Then check under the date. If there is no letter, that confirms it was made in Philadelphia. A D would indicate Denver, and an S would indicate San Francisco, which is a different coin entirely. Next, examine the weight. A genuine 1957 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. Significant deviation could indicate damage or a counterfeit. The coin should not be magnetic, since copper-based pennies are not attracted to magnets. Details matter. Look closely at Lincoln's hair, beard, and coat. On the reverse, inspect the wheat stalks. Sharp lines and defined edges are signs of less wear. Be cautious of coins that look unnaturally shiny, as harsh cleaning can reduce value significantly. Collectors prefer coins in original condition, even if they show some age. Cleaning a coin, even with good intentions, often does more harm than good. There are also fun and surprising details about the 1957 penny. This coin was in circulation when the first artificial satellite, Sputnik, was launched into space. It was in pockets during the early days of the space race, making it a silent witness to a historic moment. Another interesting fact is that many people today unknowingly spend old copper pennies at face value, not realizing that the copper content alone is worth more than 1 cent. While melting coins is illegal, the metal value highlights just how different older pennies are compared to modern ones. Collectors also love the 1957 penny because it connects directly to the final years before the Lincoln Memorial design. Just 2 years later, the reverse would change to feature the Lincoln Memorial, marking a new era in American coin design. For many collectors, this penny represents nostalgia. It reminds them of a time when coins were made of solid copper, when designs stayed the same for decades, and when everyday money felt more permanent. The 1957 no-mint mark Lincoln penny also appeals to beginners. It is affordable, widely available, and rich in history. At the same time, it offers advanced collectors a challenge, finding that perfect, high-grade example or an authentic error. This balance is what keeps the coin popular today. It is accessible yet rewarding, simple yet layered with meaning, ordinary at first glance, but remarkable once understood. As interest in tangible history continues to grow, coins like this gain renewed attention. People enjoy holding something real from the past, something that passed through the hands of earlier generations. The 1957 penny does exactly that. So the next time you come across an old penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. You might be holding a piece of mid-century America, struck by the United States Mint, preserved by chance, and valued by collectors who understand its quiet significance. The 1957 no-mint mark Lincoln penny may never shout for attention, but that is exactly what makes it special. Its story is subtle, its value depends on care and condition, and its appeal grows the more you learn. And here's the real question to leave you with. How many times have you already held one of these pennies without realizing its story? And how many are still waiting, unnoticed, in jars, drawers, and old collections, ready to surprise the person who finally takes the time to look a little closer? What if the most valuable thing in your pocket right now isn't your phone, but a tiny brown coin you've ignored for decades? Today, we're uncovering the true story behind one of the most misunderstood American coins, a penny that looks ordinary at first glance, yet carries history, mystery, and surprising value. This is the story of the 1958 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. At first, this coin doesn't shout for attention. It's a simple 1-cent piece, the kind millions of Americans used every day. But the 1958 Lincoln penny without a mint mark represents the final chapter of a legendary era in U.S. coinage, and that alone makes it special. This penny was struck in 1958 at the Philadelphia Mint, which is why it carries no mint mark under the date. At the time, Philadelphia did not place mint marks on pennies. That small absence, the missing letter beneath the year, is actually the first clue that connects this coin to a major turning point in American history. To understand why this coin matters, we need to go back to the early 20th century. In 1909, the United States introduced the Lincoln cent to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical person rather than a symbolic figure. That decision changed American coinage forever. By 1958, the Lincoln penny had been in circulation for nearly 50 years. The country had come through the Great Depression, World War II, and was now entering a period of growth and confidence. America was building highways, suburbs were expanding, and everyday coins like this penny quietly passed through millions of hands during a time of optimism and change. The 1958 penny is especially important because it marks the final year of the original wheat reverse design. On the back of the coin, you'll see 2 wheat ears framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This design symbolized prosperity and agricultural strength, ideas that were deeply important when it was first introduced. Starting in 1959, the reverse would change to the Lincoln Memorial design. That means the 1958 penny is the last chance collectors have to own a brand new coin from the wheat cent era. That alone makes it historically significant. Let's talk about what this coin is made of. The 1958 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc. That high copper content gives it a rich reddish tone when it's well preserved. Unlike modern pennies, which contain mostly zinc, these older cents have real metal value and a weight and feel that collectors appreciate. On the front of the coin, Lincoln's portrait faces right. The word liberty appears to the left, and the phrase "In God We Trust" arcs across the top. The date, 1958, sits to the right of Lincoln's profile. There is no mint mark beneath the date, confirming it was struck in Philadelphia. Now here's where things get interesting. While millions of these pennies were produced, not all of them are equal. Condition matters, and errors matter even more. One of the most famous and valuable varieties connected to 1958 is the 1958 double die obverse penny. On this rare error, the date and lettering appear doubled, especially noticeable on the words, "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." These were not created by damage or wear, but by a mistake during the die creation process. Authentic double die 1958 pennies are extremely rare, with only a small number known to exist. When verified by professional grading services, these coins have sold for astonishing prices, sometimes reaching into the tens of thousands of dollars depending on condition. Even without major errors, high-grade examples of the standard 1958 no-mint mark penny can still be valuable. Coins that were carefully saved and never circulated may still show their original red color. Collectors classify these as red, red-brown, or brown, depending on how much original copper color remains. A fully red 1958 penny in near-perfect condition can sell for hundreds of dollars at auction. That may not sound life-changing, but for a coin that originally cost 1 cent, it's an impressive return. Auction records show that top-grade specimens certified as Mint State 67 or higher have sold for several $100s, and sometimes more when collector demand is strong. Error coins, especially double dies, exist in a completely different category and can command prices that rival luxury watches or classic cars. So how do you know if the 1958 penny you found is real and potentially valuable? Start with the basics. Check the date carefully. Make sure it clearly reads 1958 and that there is no mint mark under the date. The surface should show natural wear or aging, not bubbling or peeling, which could indicate damage or alteration. If you suspect doubling, use a magnifying glass. True double die errors will show clear separation in the letters, not just blurry or flattened edges. Machine doubling, which is common and not valuable, looks more like a shadow or smear rather than a true second image. Weight is another clue. A genuine 1958 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. A significant difference could indicate damage or a counterfeit. While fakes are uncommon for regular wheat cents, high-value error coins have been counterfeited, so caution is important. Professional grading services are the safest way to confirm authenticity and value. They encapsulate the coin in a protective holder and assign it a grade, which helps buyers and sellers agree on its worth. Here's a fun fact many people don't realize. In 1958, the U.S. Mint was already preparing for major design changes. The wheat cent was quietly retired, making way for the Lincoln Memorial reverse the following year. That means some 1958 pennies may have been saved by people who sensed an ending, even if they didn't realize how meaningful it would become to collectors decades later. Another surprising detail is that these pennies were part of everyday life during the rise of rock and roll, the early space race, and the birth of modern American culture. This coin could have been in someone's pocket while watching the first televisions or listening to the radio in a 1950s living room. Collectors love the 1958 no-mint mark Lincoln penny because it sits at the crossroads of history. It's old enough to represent a bygone era, yet common enough that many people still have one tucked away in a jar or drawer. It's approachable for beginners and still exciting for advanced collectors chasing top grades or rare errors. There's also something emotional about holding the last wheat penny ever made. It feels like closing the final page of a long and important chapter in American coinage. As you look at your spare change or inherited coin collections, remember this: value doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers from a small brown coin with no mint mark and a simple date from 1958. That humble penny might not make you rich overnight, but it can connect you to history, craftsmanship, and a moment when America quietly turned the page. And once you know what to look for, you'll never see a Lincoln penny the same way again. So the next time you come across an old cent, pause for a moment. Turn it over. Look closely, because hidden in plain sight, the 1958 no-mint mark Lincoln penny reminds us that even the smallest pieces of history can still carry a powerful story.